Say, what's cracking, YouTube? It's your boy 16 to Life, and I'm back like I'm on a parole violation. Yard down! Now, for those of y'all that's new to my page, in 1994, I got arrested. I was eventually sentenced to 16 years plus life, and I served 24 years straight in the California prison system. During those times, I accumulated some good stories, some good insight. I'm going to share some with y'all today. If you happen to like the video, definitely be sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and most importantly, hit that notification bell. That way, anytime I drop a story, you will be notified ASAP, and you can hop on it whenever you're ready. Also, if you like to binge watch and catch up on some of my older stories, and I definitely got some great ones, go to my YouTube playlist, and you'll see that I have my stories organized in different categories, and I guarantee you're going to find something that you like. So yeah, you see the topic. What's it like having life watching other people go home? And once again, I sincerely think that it all depends on the individual. Like I told people a lot of times in a lot of my stories, the way I dealt with having life is not dealing with it, right? And so I would try not to think about it. And that's just the way that I happen to do my time. And then luckily for me, I was blessed with a upbeat personality. I'm pretty much jovial, outgoing. I would honestly say 98% of the time, man. And so that definitely helped me to do my time. I think another thing is, you don't when you're doing time, you don't physically see people leave, right? And so that may play a good part in it too. You would hear from time to time, from people getting close to other people, and of course they were sad to see them go, and like I said, it just all depends on the individual, right? I think a lot of people who knew other people had life, they was mindful not to talk too much in front of them about going home. I remember one of the first fights that I got into when I was in the old county jail, man. Another dude who was a Crip, and I won't mention his name or say where he was from, right? But by this time, I already had 9 years plus life. And if you guys have been keeping up with my page and my stories, so I had two different cases, right? I had caught a shooting at a party where 3 people were shot, and I was being charged with attempted murder on those people. Then I had went on the run, and I also had a separate trailing murder case. I was on the run for a year, and once I got arrested, I was charged with another murder while I was on the run. So at this particular time, I've already went to trial and have been found guilty of those shootings. So actually, what I end up getting found guilty of is great bodily injury on the guy who got shot in the head. I got 9 years for that. On the guy who they claimed that I was attempting to shoot, who was never even touched, I end up getting life on that. So yeah, that's kind of crazy, right? I get 9 years for shooting somebody in the head, and unfortunately for the victim, he had to have a lobotomy, front part of his brain removed. On the dude who I wasn't even on the dude who wasn't even hit whatsoever, I end up getting a life sentence, right? And so at this particular time, I'm still in the county jail fighting my trailing murder case, right? And so I'm in the old county jail in Riverside, and the old county jail it's like a jail, and it's pretty much underground. And so they would take you to the top, to the roof. On top of the roof, they had a basketball court. It was a rec area, and they had it. It's like a pavement on the ground and stuff, and they had a fence around. I believe you could go to the fence and look out, into the street area and stuff like that. It's been so long, right? But anyway, we was up there playing basketball, me and another young Crip. At this time, I'm probably, I don't know, 22, 23, somewhere around there, and me and this other young Crip, we had been cool, right? So the old county jail is somewhat like you would see the section that they had us in. I believe he was in 19C1 or something like that. But so we was in 8-man cells, and it's something like you would see in an old Western movie. They had these small little cells, man, with 4 bunks, four like 2 bunk beds on each side, and it was extremely small. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we was in there pretty much all day with the exception of going to a visit or going to the rec yard or something like that, right? And so he wasn't in my particular cell. He was like 3 or 4 cells down. So sometimes we would holler back and forth through the bars and talk to each other and this and that. So he knew, we had been talking. So I'd already told him that I'd had life, right? So, yeah. So yeah, matter of fact, that's what happened. So one day we're talking or whatever, and he's in his cell. He's down there 2 or 3 cells down, and he says, we was clowning, going back and forth clowning, like young people do or whatever. And he said, that's why you got life. That's why you ain't never getting out. That was the first time somebody had ever told me that, right? And I thought that just coming from another dude who was a so-called Crip, who was out there in the street, living the street life, and it could potentially get life himself on any given day. I just thought that was, some sucker stuff, right? So I said, all right, don't even trip, or something along those lines. I couldn't wait to get upstairs, and put them hammers on him. And maybe I give you guys that story, which we got the chance to go to rec. But anyway, that was the first time I had heard somebody say that, right? And I always thought it was, like I say, I thought it was some sucker stuff, man. I remember another time I was in Ironwood. There was this dude by the name of Prentice. Prentice was from Grape Street. He's home now. So shout out to Prentice, right? Prentice had life too, man. And there was another dude, man. I believe he was from Long Beach. And that dude, Prentice, was, he was doing pretty good. He had people looking out for him, so on and so forth. And this other dude, he wasn't doing too well, right? And he liked to play basketball. And then at that particular time, we could get packages from home every 90 days. And in these packages, you could get shoes, clothes, stuff like that, right? So, and then also there would be people who wouldn't get packages, and you could also get a package in their name. Have your family send them a package, but they would get the package and give it to you, and then you would give them a few items out of there or whatever type of agreement that you guys came up with. And so this other dude, man, Prentice used to always look out for this other dude, man. And I don't remember exactly what they didn't even really get into it. It wasn't a fight, right? Just the other dude ended up one day telling him, oh man, that's why you got life. That's why you ain't never going home. Shout out to Prentice, man. He didn't even trip. Prentice was much bigger than the dude, taller than him, way more than him. And he didn't, Prentice really just, stopped messing with the dude, man. And by me, having life at the time too, being able to empathize with what dude was saying, I felt Prentice should have, beep, bop, boop, bop, bop, put them lefts and rights on him. But Prentice said, oh man, I ain't tripping on that dude, So the dude gets out, and I think he ended up coming back maybe a year or two later with life itself, man. Ended up getting, I believe, 3rd strike. So, that might have been karma, right? But once again, it all just depended on the individual, having a life sentence and seeing somebody go home, knowing that the dude that you hanging out with, or you kicking it, he's getting ready to go home pretty soon, or he's leaving, sometimes that may have affected certain individuals, right? There were several times, though, I would see dudes go home and then come back. Go home and then come back. It was a few dudes like that. I remember this one individual, man, from Pasadena, Raymond. We was in Ironwood together, and he ended up going home. And matter of fact, right before he went home, I got a package in his name. Later on, now this was at a level 3, so later on I dropped down to a level 2. I ended up being charged with a stabbing on a level 2. I ended up being found not guilty, but due to some other stuff that I got in, the lady told me that your points are no longer conducive with level 2 living, and she sent me to the 4-yard, to a level 4-yard. So when I get to that 4-yard, the dude from Pasadena, Raymond, who had went home, was up there with a life sentence, right? So it just all depends on, it just all depends on the individual. Sometimes I think, sometimes I do, because it was hard for me, right, to even imagine certain individuals who weren't going home, I guess, was like envious of seeing other people go home, because I had to deal with, the way I dealt with thinking about that stuff and coming up with this theory is basically like, I would never hate on another dude going home. So for, due to the fact that it was something that was hard for me to do, I didn't think, I couldn't relate to other people doing it. I just couldn't imagine, somebody doing something like that because it wasn't in me, right? But come to find out, there were people like that, right? There were people, man, who maybe had jealousy in their heart or whatever, right? Case in point, man, I was at Salinas Valley with this blood, and he was from, I believe he was from Nine Deuce Bishop, real cool dude, man. Used to tattoo and all that old type of stuff. This was like 1996, right? So years down the line, maybe like 2016, 2017. I wasn't there when it happened, right? But the story was relayed to me. He ends up getting a date at CMC West. He's on CMC West. He comes back, he lets everybody know, yeah, I got a date, because around that time too, it was still some exciting news to hear a lifer, get parole, because initially when lifers came to prison in California, they was not getting parole. Maybe around 2009, 2010, things changed and they start paroling lifers. So anyway, this dude, he comes back, he lets people know he's got a date. Now in California, when you go to the board and you get found suitable and they give you a parole date, it's gonna take about 6 months for all the paperwork to get, checked, all the T's to get crossed, all the I's to get dotted and stuff like that. So during that 6-month waiting period, he happens to get into it with his bunkie, right? Because the level 2 CMC West is dorm living. So dude happens to get into it with his bunkie, man, and his bunkie said, "Oh man, I'm gonna mess your date up." His bunkie jumps up and fires on him, and they start fighting. And his bunkie, knowing that, as a lifer, you still have to be trouble free. You have to be disciplinary free, right? During that waiting period, not to mention about 5 years before you even get a date, which is extremely hard to do. It's extremely hard in California prisons where things are so, chaotic and sporadic, to stay out of trouble. So the dude jumps up, he gets into a fight with his bunkie, who's a lifer. The other dude is not, and he knows that's gonna, they're gonna get rolled up for it, and he's gonna lose his date. And that's exactly what happened. Now people might be wondering, okay, well, what happens to a person who doesn't have life? Well, if you don't have life and you get into a fight, or you get some type of disciplinary infraction, for the most part, all you have to do is stay out of trouble. So when you get into that fight, you may go in front of your hearing and the sergeant will say, okay, or the lieutenant, excuse me, okay, I'm going to give you 90 days lost time. So that means now you done lost 90 days. But if you stay out of trouble for 90 days, all you have to do is you fill out of the slip and you ask that your time get reinstated. And as long as you haven't been in any more trouble during that time period, they're going to reinstate your time. So it's not affecting them. A lifer, you may go to the board in 2018 as a lifer. You may have cussed the police out way back in 1999. They're going to ask you about that, and they're going to ride you about it and every other thing you did. And so you can get denied for something like that. Anytime a lifer gets a write-up, it is very, very, very detrimental to his potential freedom, right? And so only time I kind of remember, man, I kind of like lightweight was like, dang, and I kind of got a little, like a little lightweight offended, right? It was another homie actually, and this dude was a lifer, right? And so he was a lifer on the third strike. He was a lifer on a non-violent third strike. And so when they created the third strikes in California, originally it was supposed to be for people who had a violent third strike. Somewhere along the creating of the law, they made it where your third strike, any type of crime, if you have two previous violent felonies, your third strike didn't have to be violent. So maybe, I don't know, after about 10-15 years in prison, they wanted to overturn that and make it to where your third strike definitely had to be violent. So my homie, who was from IE, who didn't have a violent third strike, was waiting. Now they was voting. It was during the voting season, and so he was waiting for the votes to, the people to vote on this initiative or whatever, and hopefully that would free the lifers who hadn't had a violent third strike. So he was like, yeah, I'm going home, man. I'm going home. He would say this like every day. Oh yeah, I'll be out of here, man. 4 months this time, I'll be home chilling with my daughter, man. I'll be home, man, chilling with my daughter. He was just saying that all the time. So after a while, hearing them say that did kind of like get to me, like, okay, damn, man, you gonna be home chilling with your daughter, you gonna be eating food, you gonna be having fun, but turns out, right, on that particular vote, the voters in California didn't vote to overturn the three-strike law. So he stayed in a little longer, and I'm sure when they voted, I'm sure he was crushed, right? But that was really about the only time that I may have been, lightweight affected by somebody talking about going home. When I did get a date years later in 2018, I was extremely mindful not to, talk about going home and discuss my plans in front of other lifers, right? Because each individual, it affects them differently, right? So um, it just all depends. Like I say, once again, man, it all depends, regardless of what people may say in prison, right? Everybody wants to go home. Sometimes you do have people who lose hope and who give up hope, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to go home. But anyway, man, that was just a little my thinkings about what it's like to have a life sentence and watch people steady go home. Anyway, you already know what it is, man. It's your boy 16 to life. Resume normal program.